Good morning. This is Diane Moore from the Downtown Public Library. And this morning I'd like to talk just a little bit about when to harvest things from your garden. Now, a lot of things are sort of obvious. When the citrus fruit starts to turn color, well, that's not really the time you harvest. The time you harvest, if you have any citrus growing, is when you press on it and it gives a little bit. You sure don't want it mushy. But a little bit like other fruits, once you pick it, then it will start turning the color it's supposed to be. Now, some things you don't want mushy. I wish I could say I grew this apple, but I didn't. This was from Wooden's Apple House. This is nice and firm. You don't want a mushy apple. It's starting to deteriorate in quality. So if you have apple trees, other fruits, pears, Ralph Waldo Emerson said the time to enjoy a pear after it's not ripe and before it's too ripe is about 10 minutes. Pears you pick while they're still hard. You can wrap them individually in tissue if you like, and then just watch them. And then when they get to that point, enjoy quickly. Figs that I have growing here, if you have figs in your yard, once they feel soft, again, they're a lot like pears. They have a very short life of ripeness before they split and start going bad. Strawberries, of course, you want to wait until they're nice and red. If you can keep them away from the insects that have enjoyed mine this year for the most part, I think I'm going to take them up to my mom's farm and plant them, where they might have a better chance. And then we're going to walk past the figs, which are doing very nicely this year. Got some from Crabtree Farms, and they're just doing really, really well. The other figs are fine too. Walk past the blueberries that were mostly enjoyed by the birds in my yard this year, but that's okay. That was with my permission. We're going to come over to here to one of my favorite vegetables ever, okra. I planted something called rainbow okra, and I got this lovely burgundy okra. This one is about 5 or 6 inches long. This one, and I didn't look it up again, is called Alabama something. It's short and chubby, green with a little splash of red on it. That's my husband's new okra. I've got one over here that just started to bear, but I took my lovely okra collection up to share with my mom. But it was a light green, almost white. That one was about 5 or 6 inches long. Right over here we have another okra. I can't let you see my collection of mess over there. That one is about 6 inches long. And then over here are some little tiny baby okras. Now okra, as soon as it's a tiny little baby like that, you know, even an inch or 2 long, you can pick that. That's up to you. I don't like my okra to get really big and tough. I like it to be nice and tender. So that is definitely up to you. Love Dad, not all, but a lot of his vegetables he liked kind of a little tougher and then cooked till they were mush for the rest of us. Kind of an old, not all, but some Southern tradition, and that's okay. He would just say about vegetables, it's just not cooked enough for me. This is a pepper. I thought it was one of the ones that turn red that start with an M that are all the rage with chefs, and I can never remember the name, but it's not. It's got a little bit of purple on it. I could pick this now and use it. It'll continue to turn purple if I leave it in a bowl or somewhere on the counter, but it will also turn color out here. And peppers don't get attacked as viciously as tomatoes do, so I'm not going to really worry about picking that yet. Over here, I have my poblano peppers, or ancho when they're dried. These can get pretty large. These are only about 3 or 4 inches long, probably through some fault of mine. Picked one the other day and used it. It was delicious. So that was big enough. Here I've got the bay tree. Bay leaves you want to pick and then dry them before you use them. Won't hurt you to use them fresh. Herbs, you can just pick those anytime they're growing. In fact, the more you pick them and keep them bushy and cut down, the more they'll produce. I did cut down one of my basils. I did not cut down the Thai basil, which is just something I should do. So again, I think it's blocking some of the sun from some of the peppers that I have growing in here. I did cut down my lemon basil, and I'm pretty sure that my peppers are doing better because of that. Over here we have some garlic chives. I have more garlic chives than I could ever use in a lifetime, so I'm happy to let these go to flower, although normally you would cut the flowers off to keep the leaves producing. But the local pollinators and insects love those flowers, and I've got plenty. Here's my very, very, very healthy pineapple sage, which probably needs to be trimmed a little. And over here you can see what'll happen. This is my lemon thyme, which was looking wonderful. It got kind of hot and dry. My watering person didn't water like I hoped they would, but if I'd kept this trimmed down better, it would be bushier and happier. Over here in the squash patch, things didn't do so well this year, and I hope my eggplants will recover. Had a lot of insects that I didn't expect, and while I was at work, they were at work too, chomping on my squash. Squash is another thing. Summer squashes that you can pick when they're little and cute. You can even eat the blossoms, or you can let them get a little bit bigger, but you don't want them to get too big and tough. If you can stab them with your fingernail easily, they're right. Past that, if they get hard, they might be a little tough and rough to eat, and then the plant thinks it's done its job and it may not produce as well. Over here in this bed with Garden Spider Girl, we have Swiss chard that, yes, right in the spider neighborhood, something ate some leaves. But Swiss chard, lettuce, spinach, all of those greens, you can just pick those when they're eensy-weensy as microgreens, or you can wait until they get a little bit bigger. Again, you don't want them to get too tough. That Swiss chard cooks a lot longer than some of the other greens, collards, mustards, and things. You can cook those a little longer. You can get away with letting them grow a little bit bigger. Onions, you can pick the outside leaves and let the inside continue to grow, or you can pick the whole thing. In the case of just regular green onions, you can just cut off the green part, leaves 3 or 4 inches or so of the other part with a little bulb, root it some more in water, and plant it again. Never have to pay for that again. Tomatoes, if you want fried green tomatoes, pick them when they're green. In my garden, I pick tomatoes when they're starting to get some color, because if I don't, this year, they're getting attacked by things. And these the big ones over here, these are leftover from the summer. They produced so well, they were beautiful. We really enjoyed the tomatoes. But now, they only have a couple of small little tomatoes, and it's time really to take them up out of the ground and either replace them with other large tomato plants, because we do have that long growing season, or just plant something completely different. And these are some of the other tomatoes that I've planted for later. A Michael Pollan tomato, something crawling on it, which is a good insect, not a bad insect. And I think this is Barry's Crazy Cherries. Over here I have another sad little pepper that I don't think got enough sun in this bed. Over here I have some jalapenos doing really well. This is part of a food bank project to see which pepper produces better. I would go with the big jalapeno. Really nice peppers, not super hot, but then I don't use the seeds or the really hot parts because I'm a wuss. Over here we have plenty of chives. You can see yellow in there. If I'd been cutting those more and using them as I should, they would be lusher and greener, and you wouldn't see that. Over here in the bean bed, unfortunately I had problems with ants in this bed, but I am going to try to Replant my red noodle beans. I love them so much. Over here I have some purple potted beans. They're a little bit green when they're little, and then when they're ripe they turn purple. This one is small, but you can see it's starting to flatten out. You don't want them to get big enough to have beans inside unless you're growing dry beans. This is a variety that stays pretty tender even when it gets a little big. This one's too big, it's got a bean growing in it. But again, beans, you can pick those when they're eensy weensy little cute vegetables like expensive restaurants and farmer markets, or you can wait till they get bigger. But again, let them be flat if they're flat beans, or like a pencil if they're round beans, and don't let them get too full of beans unless you're growing dry beans, because they're going to get tough. Eggplant, not doing too well this year, but I'm hoping it'll recover. When it gets to a decent size, which depends on the variety, and it's a little bit shiny, go ahead and pick it. Those don't do as well as eensy weensy vegetables though. And you sort of need to, for those, you need to look at your seed packet or know approximately how big they should be. These are ones I just pulled off because they didn't do well. I don't think those would work well. The ones that my mom used are about twice that size, probably about 4 to 6 inches, and those have been just fine. Over here in another bed, I have another kind of a zucchini growing. It's tromboncino. They get up to 3 foot long, and you can eat them like a zucchini, and then they get harder. So there are some squashes that you can use both like winter and summer squash. That's one of them. If you have winter squash, and I don't in this garden, those are up at the farm, then what you want to do is wait until they're one solid color, if that's the color they're supposed to be. If they have speckles, they're supposed to, that's fine. And they're hard. Ooh, and there is a nasty, nasty, one of the horrible squash beetles that helped murder, it's running away, my squash this year while I was at work. Must have been some delicious squash. I know I didn't get to enjoy any. Someone had also asked me about root vegetables. How do you tell when it's time to pluck a carrot out of the ground? How do you tell when your beets or your radishes are ready? Well, with some things, carrots, and this is a parsley plant, when you get about that many leaves, you might have a carrot worth pulling. And again, you can eat baby carrots. They're delicious. They're great roasted. They're great just to munch on. Potatoes, when the flowers die and the plant starts dying down, then it's time to dig up. But if you've had them in the garden for a while, you can very, very carefully go to the side of the plant and look for small new potatoes. Or once the leaves die down, you can just carefully dig or pull the whole thing up. If you have real loose soil, you can pull. But be careful when you dig so you don't slice into the potatoes. For other things like beets and carrots and plants that you can't really see what's going on, when you plant them, you're gonna, no matter what you do, you're gonna plant them a little thicker than you mean to, and you can pull one here and there and see what it's doing, or you can just literally, and I'm gonna do this with an onion, it won't hurt it at all, you can just go right beside the carrot or the beet or the radish or whatever it is. Just pull the soil away a little bit and just feel with your finger. If it feels like it's of a decent size, go ahead and pull it up. If it's not, put the dirt back on it, maybe give it a drink of water if it's really hot out, and let it continue to grow. And again, beets, radishes, carrots, onions, all of those things, if you do pluck them up out of the ground before they're the ultimate size you were looking for, doesn't really matter. You can still eat them. They're still perfectly good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have growing out here that would help you. No help with the avocados. It'll be some years before they bear, and I sure hope they do. It helps a lot to Google things another way to learn when to harvest, and varieties can do different things. One variety might have done one thing for you. Another variety might be a watermelon radish instead of a regular radish, and those things can get massive. So part of what you're going to do to learn about when to harvest, if it's something you plant and you like it and you're going to grow it again, is experience. Sow it a little bit thickly, a little tiny bit more thickly than it says, and then thin as you go, and that will help you know when your radish or your carrot or your pepper or whatever it is that you have makes you the happiest when you eat it. Enjoy your vegetables. Don't stress out about the garden. I saw something somewhere that said how not to be stressed and fatigued by your almost fall garden. Take a row, take a bed, take a plant at a time, and enjoy. Remember, it's there to give you fresh, delicious produce and relax you and make you happy. So don't stress out. Something's not doing well, pull it out of the ground, try another variety, or plant something else. Now is the time that you can start thinking about broccolis and radishes and beets and spinaches and lettuces and all those lovely things. So think ahead, enjoy what you have, and know that all the big seed companies and botanical gardens and places have test gardens exactly for that reason. Nothing is going to do well everywhere. There are going to be certain things you're going to find that are just going to grow like crazy in your yard, and your neighbor next door won't be able to get the first little bit. It'll sit there at 2 inches. So just plant what you love, see what does well, try another variety if it's something you really love, and just enjoy. Have a great day, be safe, be happy, eat your vegetables and fruits. See you next time.